Commercial drugs still have their issues, right? We've seen this in a variety of spaces where there's been shortages, particularly when you think of COVID and all the rapid sequence innovation drugs were on short order. FDA actually turned to the outsourcing facility community to see who could quickly get ramped up to help with that supply, right? But those things happen from time to time. Flu season, you see shortages and so on.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Evan Gilbert. He's the CEO at Carie Boyd Pharmaceuticals. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Evan, why don't you start and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh boy, it's going to not be terribly interesting, but let me try, right? I started my career off as an attorney working for one of the many Wall Street firms. And that became intense. You know, you're working 6-7 days a week as they do on Wall Street. And I'm originally from Arizona, so I decided to move back home, joined a firm there that worked, does a lot of M&A work, mergers and acquisitions work, and primarily in the healthcare space. So I started building my practice around healthcare businesses. And I came across Carie Boyd as a customer of mine or a client of mine. And after working with them for about a year, was invited by the then owner to come in-house and work as the general counsel. And when I got in-house, we discovered that the business really didn't have any financials, right? So we needed to start building that as well. So I ended up with a title of CFO and general counsel. And I just happened to be the person who knew a little bit more than everybody else about financials and had to figure it out from there. And then if you fast forward 3 or 4 years, the CEO and owner needed to step out. And so I took over his role. And it was very much a founder-led company, right? So a lot of those founder issues. And we worked to clean that up, and we've been growing and expanding ever since. So I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish. We've grown the team. We've tripled the size of the team since I took over. So it's been a fun ride.
Wow. Yeah, no, it sounds like, your experience and expertise really carried over to you, stepping into this CEO role. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about Carie Boyd Pharmaceuticals?
So Carie Boyd Pharmaceuticals, as the name suggests, we're in the pharmaceutical space. And if you think about the pharmaceutical supply chain, you've got these FDA approved drugs. So if you're going to Walgreens, if you're going to CVS, you're going to get a drug that is been approved by the FDA, means it's been through all that testing that the FDA requires and has a brand on it, et cetera. So most of us are used to that. The doctor saying, which pharmacy do you want to use? And you're choosing between a Walgreens and a CVS, whichever one's closer to you. And compounding occupies a different space. If you rewind the pharmaceutical space back maybe 100 years, everything was compounded. And compounded simply means that you're taking ingredients, you're putting them together, and you're creating a drug out of it, right? And so that is not an FDA approved medication. So it's compounded, not FDA approved. Manufactured is FDA approved, right? And so compounding then became replaced in large part by FDA approved drugs. And they liked that because of all the testing associated with it, which is great. But there's always this part of the market that is underserved by that. You have a percentage of the population that does not, that has an allergy to whatever we call it commercially available, the FDA approved version. So the commercially available drug people have an allergy to it, or there's a shortage in it, or what have you. Then you're going to need compounding. You also need compounding if there doesn't exist any commercial medication. So compounding still occupies a very important role and always will as it relates to the medication supply chain, right? Then when you look at the 1990s and early 2000s, there was really this push for personalized medicine. So Kelsey, if you go in and you say to your doctor, I've got this liver condition, and the doctor says, well, I've got these commercial products that are going to be 80% effective with you. They're also going to cause you, Kelsey, because of your genetics and who you are, how you've lived your life, they're going to cause you these side effects, which may be negligible, may be serious or whatever. But let's imagine that this liver medication is going to cause you to break out in acne and give you joint soreness because of how you metabolize that drug. Well, the doctor can say, you know what, Kelsey, I can call up my pharmacist. There's a compounding pharmacist I know, and she can put together a medication that works specifically for you to eliminate those secondary reactions or adverse effects, right? And so it's designed specifically for Kelsey. And you're thinking, well, that sounds much better. Now, it's not an approved drug. It is similar to the approved, but it doesn't have the negative stuff in there for you, Kelsey. So that movement in medicine kind of took hold in, like I said, the late 90s, early 2000s. And then from there, you started to see that a lot of the population, because if you think about a commercial drug, maybe it works terrific for 75, 80% of the population, but then it doesn't work well for the other 20 or 25%. So when you had these buckets of people who were being underserved, 20 or 25% of the population, a lot of it was for the same reason. So Kelsey, her friend Sarah, her friend Jane, and so forth, all being underserved by this medication, it became necessary for compounders to make bulk versions of the compound, right? So the same drug that you might need that's personalized to you may also be the same one that Jane needs, right? So when that started happening, then the FDA said, oh, and then in addition to that, there was compounders were filling out, were helping out in areas where there were no FDA approved drugs, no commercial options. So let's say you had a liver condition and there was a treatment for it that your doctor was familiar with, but there was no FDA approved drugs to help you, that there might be compounders in the space that your doctor knows, and he can say, listen, this isn't FDA approved, but I'm very comfortable for these reasons. And you can make this medical choice between you and your doctor as to whether you want to pursue that treatment with this approved medication or this compounded medication. So that became, because you're now taking more control over your health. You are now able to control what your treatment looks like, and you're able to personalize that treatment. Mm-hmm. So doctors like this, patients liked this. It made a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. But the FDA started saying, well, we have these compounders out there who don't have much regulation on them. And there was a John Oliver piece on this that maybe we can include in the notes or something. It talked about how terrible compounders were, right? Because they are regulated by the states. And so there was this seminal case referred to as New England Compounding Centers, right? NECC. And this New England-based compounder was putting out a ton of compounded medications, but it was made in insanitary conditions. So what that meant is somebody got injected with it, and it was causing them to not only have some side effects, but actually to die. People were getting meningitis, right? And so different numbers varied, but they estimated that these medications that came from this facility caused about 100 deaths. Wow. And so it was a really unfortunate and sad situation. And so the FDA said, we have to come in and we have to do something about this. So they created, when you think about compounders, think about basically a pharmacy and pharmacists and their technicians making medications, right? So that's what was happening. Then your doctor would send in a prescription for whatever the compounded medication was, and then the pharmacy would fill that for you, make it, fill it, and then you're off on your way. That's how it was working. And then when they were doing this in bulk, they were either doing with a lot of different prescriptions, or they were sending a lot of one medication to the doctor based on one prescription, different ways. But the point is that it was just pharmacists and technicians operating in their spaces doing this, being regulated by the states that they were licensed in. Mm-hmm. So FDA says, this is clearly not enough. So we need to come in and put another layer of regulation in. What they created something called an outsourcing facility. And so Congress passed this act. We create these outsourcing facilities, and outsourcing facilities are specifically designed to compound in bulk and make large swaths of medications that patients need, but that have not been approved by the FDA.
Mm-hmm.
And so that swath of when you're looking at FDA approved, or, I'm sorry, when you're looking at bulk compounded products, those that are made by outsourcing facilities are made pursuant to standards that reflect and are basically the same as FDA manufacturers. So the companies that are making all of the commercially approved drugs and the things that they have to comply with, now the compounders that are outsourcing facilities have to do the same. You still have pharmacies out there that compound pursuant to prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
The outsourcing facilities don't take prescriptions. They take in orders from physicians or healthcare facilities or places like that, so that the healthcare facilities can use that medication in the treatment of their patients, right? But we don't send it as an outsourcing facility directly to patients. So you kind of have like a B2C model on the pharmacy side and a B2B model on the outsourcing facility side. So at Carie Boyd, we have both the compounding pharmacy as well as the outsourcing facility.
Wow.
We were one of the first, so the first outsourcing facility registered with the FDA at the very end of 2013. It was like December something of 2013. Carie Boyd registered in 2015 initially, and we're one of the longest tenured outsourcing facilities that is registered. This industry is new for outsourcing facilities. For pharmacies, it's ancient, right? It's been around for a long time. But for outsourcing facilities, you're talking about 10 years old. You can count it, but there's about 80 outsourcing facilities nationwide, and some are owned by some of the same companies, and they do different things. Some of them will provide specifically to hospitals, certain products just to hospitals. Others provide just to clinics. We do a little bit of both. And so we're providing medications to clinics, to doctors who can give an injection or use the medication on site. And we also are we're providing medications to hospitals, urgent cares, hospital systems, things of that sort, so that they can use it in the procedures with their patients. Does that make sense? It's sort of a broad overview, and there's a lot to take in.
Yeah. No, super helpful to understand too, kind of the two different components that make up Carie Boyd Pharmaceuticals, because it sounds like, unlike a lot of other companies, just kind of what you've mentioned to me, a lot of companies stick with one or the other. Am I right in thinking that?
That's correct. There's not very many that have both the pharmacy side and the outsourcing facility side.
Yeah. So when you're talking about Carie Boyd's, products, you're talking about the different compounds. Is there different trends and areas of expertise? Is it, women's health, men's health? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, good question. So we break ours down into what we do on the hospital / urgent care side and what we do on the clinic side. On the clinic side, we are providing medications that are primarily what we consider in the wellness or functional health area. So if you go to a doctor and you want to make sure that you are living a healthy life, that you're taking steps to avoid disease, or what we refer to as increasing your health span. The health span is a healthy part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking to do those types of things, you're dealing with a lot of functional medicine doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Those doctors are using a lot of our products, like in the hormone space or men's health or women's health, things of that nature. And so our main product and what we're mostly known for are the subcutaneous implantable hormone pellets. So it's a little pellet. And in fact, I guess it's on the sign behind me here. It's a little pellet that a doctor inserts under your skin, in like your hip. And it's good for 4 to 5 months for women, 5 to 6 months for men. And the idea is it gets us more of a sustained release of the medication, the hormone, for people who are on hormone replacement therapy, than would like an injection. So an injection typically spikes. This is designed to be a more sustained release over that period of time. And so it's nice from a patient compliance standpoint, but ours are also bioidentical, which means when your body produces hormones, there's specific receptors throughout your body, and the hormones bind to those receptors. When you have a synthetic hormone, your receptor may not identify it as a hormone, or it could bind somewhere else in your body and cause problems. When it's bioidentical and it's exactly the same as what you're producing naturally, then those complications goes down, the efficacy of the treatments go up. So that's all preferred, right? So bioidentical is a big thing in the hormone space. And you want to be a specialist in that area so you understand those differences of where your supply chain is coming from. Other things that we do for clinics, we'll provide dental offices, anesthetics. We provide anesthetics to the hospital space for like wound cares, bed sores. We help provide medications to help treat those. So I think of it as, topical anesthetics that are primarily used in the hospital space for us, and then wellness that are primarily used in the clinic space. But we also have some anesthetic products that are used in the clinic space as well. So I hope and I guess that's on the outsourcing facility side. On the pharmacy side, we do a lot of hormone stuff as well, but we also are doing aesthetics, right? So hair loss formulas. We have a particular hair loss formula that is used by several hundred physicians nationwide and quite a large number of patients, over 1,000 patients, I believe, nationwide. And it has produced these great results. So for men and women who might have thinning hair, this is something to help combat that.
That's really interesting. So, it sounds like having the difference between the pharmacy, the outsourcing, the clinics, and then, the other branch as well. Those are kind of, several different reasons that Carie Boyd is really able to stand out from its competition, kind of with all of these different arms. Am I right in thinking that?
I think so. That's what we like to tell people. We want to be able to be the compounding solution for any of the customers that come to us. The idea when you are a physician and having to deal with a compound, it's a little bit, there's less known about the medication, right? When you think about an FDA approved drug, you have studies to refer to, you have a variety of materials to refer to. It's less so in the compounding space. So you need to have that trusted supplier, and you don't want to try and find multiple suppliers. The other thing that happens in compounding is the consistency of the supply is very difficult. So the supply chain is much less firm than it would be with commercial drugs. Commercial drugs still have their issues, right? We've seen this in a variety of spaces where there's been shortages, particularly when you think of COVID and all the rapid sequence inhibition drugs were on short order. FDA actually turned to the outsourcing facility community to see who could quickly get ramped up to help with that supply, right? But those things happen from time to time. Flu season, you see shortages and so on. So compounders are helpful in that space, but when they are the consistent supplier within an industry, then there can be these supply chain issues because it's a relatively new space. And so for us, we need to be consistent in that supply for our customers. They need to know that when they place an order in 2 or 3 days, that order is in their office and they're able to use it with their patients. You can't have large stretches, like for hormone products, for example. If somebody's on a particular regimen for just say our pellets, if they're used to using our pellets, every 5-6 months, and suddenly there's a 2-month delay, well, that's a pretty big problem for them. They're not able to get that medication. They're going to see negative health effects as a result. And that's difficult for the provider. That's difficult for the patient. So that consistency is a big key.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would comment on is just the quality of the compounding experience, right? So one of the metrics that's, I think, easiest to understand is when you have commercial production of products, generally speaking, the potency of that product has to be plus or minus 10%. So if you're taking a 20 milligram tablet, you know that you're getting the potency of like 18 to 22 milligrams of that drug, right? And those same standards apply for outsourcing facilities, right? So we've got to comply with that plus or minus 10% kind of a range. Because we're dealing with functional medicine in areas where you really need to be precise, precision medicine is key here for us. We've refined that potency. So like our average potency on our pellets is 1.5%. And so, but if you're not achieving that 1.5%, if you're at 7, 8, 9%, patients may perceive a difference. Doctors may be concerned about that difference. So you want to have those potency numbers down. You want to make sure that that's all consistent. And then you want to make sure that your supply chain is consistent. So consistency and quality of that consistency are key.
What would you say the most significant misconception about the industry is?
I think the idea that we are able to change what we do. So if a doctor has a negative result with one of our products, the knee-jerk reaction can sometimes be, well, you guys did something wrong in making this product. And it's a completely fair initial assumption. And what we have to do then is when that comes in and they say, hey, did you do this correctly? We have to say, well, here's all the records. We did make this according to these specs. Here's the independent third-party testing that was done on this product. And so, no, this wasn't, whatever the negative result was not a result of what we did. Because we can't change our process. We can't change what we do. And if we do get those reports in, we have to evaluate all those, because if there are serious and adverse consequences resulting from any of our medication use, then if those results were not, if they're serious and unexpected, we have to report that into the FDA. And it's a great tool that the FDA has. They need to see this stuff so we can understand A, who's a good actor, who's a bad actor within the supply chain. And B, if there's going to be any sort of action that needs to be taken as far as, can you compound this medication anymore? Should they allow compounding of this medication? Or do we need to, kind of rid the market of it? So those things, those trigger a set of things that happen for us. And it's the idea that we're sort of in the room, just kind of making things and weighing things out on a scale and then just kind of scooping it into a pellet or into a capsule or whatever. It doesn't exist. There's a huge amount of precision that goes into this, and a lot of testing that needs to be done just before it goes out the door. And that's not just, we have our own standards, but there are industry standards that prevent us from deviating from that. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception.
Yeah, and it sounds like, that precision too helps to build trust because, like you said, there's very rigorous standards that, are upheld. So being able to build and establish that trust and explain the process, I think is really helpful for you to be able to break down for our listeners. So I appreciate you doing that. But so, Evan, as we start to wrap up this conversation, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
I would leave your listeners with, take your healthcare into your own hands. When you are looking to improve your overall health, your overall how you're feeling, find the right doctors, somebody that you trust. If you find somebody that you trust, make sure that you check out who they're using if it is compounded medication. I think compounded medication is an amazing tool within the healthcare system. I think compounded medication is going to help people live longer, happier, healthier lives, right? And I think it's something that we should emphasize and lean into. I also think it requires a little bit more diligence if you are a healthcare provider to make sure you're working with the right people. And I think if you're the patient, it's something else that you should ask your provider about, particularly if you are paying cash for any of this, right? So you're not being covered by health insurance. You now have this financial obligation. So check out who you're working with. I think it can really help people in their lives. And I think that if they don't be afraid to ask the questions. And if you've gotten comfortable with it, then I think you're gonna see lots of benefits.
Yeah. Well, Evan, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you breaking down all things Carie Boyd Pharmaceuticals, the different, components between the pharmacies, the outsourcing. I think this has been a really great conversation, and I appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah, great to have you.
Bye-bye.
There we go. Easy enough, right?
Easy enough.
All right,
Easy
awesome.
enough.
Great. What I will do is I will get this to my production team. They'll probably have it wrapped up midweek next week. I'll go ahead and I'll send it to you guys just to review before we publish it. And then, we can take the conversation from there.
Thanks so much.
All right,
Appreciate
awesome.
you thinking of us.
Yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.